In a few hours' time, Europe's leaders meet for their crucial summit meeting in Brussels, and what a difference a few days have made. The optimism with which the promise of a grand plan was greeted has evaporated, as it's become evident just how far apart the key players are on the most crucial of details. Well, I'm joined now from Westpac's London office by James Shugg. Well, James, promises. I gather the finance ministers' meeting has been cancelled and the summit is now due to start at 4 p.m. with all 27 EU leaders.
Yes. Good evening, Tiki. That's right. There was going to be possibly a finance ministers' meeting to nut out the final details, but apparently they're still so far behind they decided it wasn't even worth having that. EU leaders are still meeting, all 27 of them. Then an hour and 15 minutes later, we see just the 17 Eurozone members, leaders meet. And then it'll be a few hours after that hopefully we'll get some sort of announcements. I mean, the three key... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, recapitalisation of the banks seem to be closer on that, but the issue of the bailout and who should fund it seems to be a very difficult sticking point.
Well, the two real sticking points are the bailout of Greece and to what extent should the creditors of Greece wear a huge haircut. I mean, the banks are balking at numbers as high as 60% loss that they're expected to wear. And then there's the EFSF, the European Financial Stability Facility, the bailout fund. They want to expand that, but there's ongoing argument about how to actually do that.
But James, these guys have been going around the houses on precisely these issues for days and days and days now.
Look, and weeks and months. Look, this is the problem with Europe. It's all talk and no action. Whatever is announced today, that we'll have to see further detail nutted out, probably sometime in November. Then it will have to be ratified by 17 Eurozone parliaments. So by the time anything is actually firmly put in place, I can promise you, Europe will already be in a recession.
Meanwhile, there's a lot of political tension building, I gather, in Italy. Reports now that Berlusconi has done a deal which would mean he would be stepping down. In return for some support on the pension funds.
Well, if you believe that, you'll believe that Europe will avoid a recession next year. But certainly that's true. The reports are that he's persuaded the government, and he's very argumentative coalition government, to put in place the budget reforms that are considered necessary to help Italy avoid the problems that Portugal, Ireland and Greece have got in exchange for him stepping down. But look, they've backed down so many times on the budget measures that they've said they're going to put into place, so don't hold your breath on that one.
And meanwhile, it looks as though China's going to take some sort of major role here. We've got the head of the EFSF heading to Beijing on Friday, I understand.
I'm not so convinced about that. There's been a lot of talk about Brazil even and been getting involved, and certainly China. I mean, the Chinese do buy the bonds of Europe, but it remains to be seen what sort of commitment they really want to make. They don't want to lose money, but at the same time, they don't want the European economy to go down the gurgler, given that they're a major consumer of Chinese-made manufacturers. So there are arguments on both sides as to whether or not the Chinese will participate, but certainly the Europeans would love them too.
So finally, what do you think the market's going to do by this time tomorrow?
Well, I think there's a lot of disappointment probably already priced in. I think the next big step is going to be next week. The European Central Bank, do they cut interest rates? The ECB just has not done its role. It has not stepped up to the plate. It should be doing so much more. And if they don't, then I think that's going to be a huge negative for markets. We also got the G20 meeting in Cannes. Hopefully we'll get some more concrete news out of that.
James Shugg, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Tiki.